So today we're going to be covering a bunch of different myths that we've been hearing about from various groups, various discussions, and tackling a lot of different myths around, especially metabolism. I think metabolism is one of those topics where it's very easy to quote a research study and then define a whole methodology to be based around a research study. And the other day I saw on a popular YouTube channel something around a 40-hour water fast. And a whole discussion on that and all the benefits that according to it around it, and it just got us thinking around how many metabolism myths there are out there. So what I thought we'd do today is discuss a bunch of them, and probably one of the most common one we hear is around metabolic damage, metabolic adaptation. So let's start off with that one. And who wants to go?
I can get going with it. I think
you don't know where to start.
Yeah, well, I guess really when a new client comes to us, it's not uncommon at all for them to at least hint at or allude to potentially there is some kind of metabolic issue behind, the reason they are overweight or they've struggled to be successful with their weight loss in the past. And I would say 9 times out of 10, more like 99 times out of 100. That's not what's preventing them from achieving their health and fitness goals. And it's these bigger blocks in terms of energy balance with, are they in control of their food? Are they eating what they think they're eating? Are they moving as much as they think they are? And it's these things that are out of line. It's really their perception of these things are out of line rather than actually any metabolic issues that they're actually having.
Exactly. I think on the head there. There's a lot of people think more often than not that there is an underlying thyroid issue, an underlying hormonal issue that they need to address first before they can actually start losing weight. People saying I need to control my insulin, otherwise I can't get lean. And we've got multiple case studies of people getting super lean with super high carb diets. And I'm sure you guys have seen it in the bodybuilding world as well. These people get the leanest out of anyone, right? Yet a lot of the diets are always pretty much high carb. Actually, there was some recent research done where they analyzed the diets of, I think, a few of the UK top bodybuilders, and they just wanted to look at their macro percentages, so to speak. And the ones who always did the best also seem to have the highest carbohydrate intake. So again, if insulin was such a huge impact or had such a huge impact on your fat loss efforts, then these people by definition should have not been able to get absolutely inside out shredded on a high carb diet. So I think this is where people run into they just get confused. They think it's either calories in, calories out, or hormones. I think that's another big popular myth or big argument that gets discussed in the stratosphere, as you would say. It's like, no, calories in, calories out is nonsense. I eat 1,000 calories a day and I'm not losing weight, all that sort of stuff. It must be my hormones. When in fact, no, you're not eating 1,000 calories per day. You're eating a lot more than that. And you're just not moving as much as you think you are. And you're not sharing the other days where you're eating like 1,500 calories a day or 2,000 calories a day. You're only sharing a little snapshot of the 3 days where you've eaten 1,000 calories. Like, I'm sure you guys can attest to this. How good are the meal plans that we get in the application form? How good are they? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's literally, wow, you're eating 900 calories a day and you're 100 kilos. It's interesting, let's dive a little bit deeper into that. But, when you actually add up the numbers that a lot of these applications put in, sometimes they end up like that,
Yeah.
I do think it's natural to gravitate towards these kind of myths, though. If you have been struggling with something and then there is an almost an easy get out clause, it's much more attractive to naturally go towards that. If you're potentially getting a bit older, you might hear in the newspaper saying, "Oh, metabolism slows down. That must be why I'm now gaining weight." Whereas in reality, the change in metabolism as you get older is so small compared to the discrepancy you have with what's actually going on with your diet and exercise. That's not really the cause, but it's much easier to gravitate towards that for sure.
One of the things is like everyone thinks that they've got a unique situation whereby, in your 20s, you've got this problem, in your 30s, you've got that problem, in your 40s is this, 50s is that. And the reality is we we've transformed lives of all different age groups, all different backgrounds, all different obstacles, and more often than not, it's pretty much the same principles. The principles are the same. The way it's personalized is different, but the principles are still the same. It's not like for the over 50s we have to consider hormones to a massive extent. I mean, Ivan, when you coach my dad, you've never considered. You never said to him, "Oh, your hormones. You're 60 years old, so your hormones are going to be off. So we need to do something different here." It's the same thing.
Yeah.
He just needs to manage his calories and build a lifestyle solution around that.
I had to check his umbilical just to make sure his cortisol was intact. But
as much as we laugh about it, I'm going to be honest. If I rewind 7 years, I was reading Charles Poliquin articles and thinking, oh no, I need to keep my I was making changes in accordance to what I thought was going to impact hormone levels, which would then have body composition implications. But the fact is, I was in worse shape then than I am now, and it's because I was looking at these minute things that I may not even actually be having an effect on, rather than just making sure I was in control of things like energy balance. So it's although we have a laugh, I can understand why people fall for it, because I was in that boat as well.
I've done it all as well. Like literally, some of the stuff I was just thinking about. I took this thing called Live 52, right, which is meant to help your liver detoxify at a faster rate, and I thought that was the reason why I wasn't gaining muscle. And I thought of all the reasons I wasn't gaining muscle. It wasn't that I wasn't eating enough. It wasn't that I was getting stronger. It's because my liver wasn't detoxifying quick enough. And I was like 20 years old. Like my liver, and it's like you're just not gonna have any of this issues. And then the other one was like I was taking all these HCl tablets because, again, at the age of 19, I thought my stomach acid was completely destroyed, and that's the reason again why I'm not losing body fat or I'm not gaining muscle.
I think my worst one was Poliquin put out the paper that they print receipts on.
I did the same thing.
Basically, if you touch it, it will, I don't know, wipe out your testosterone or whatever it is.
BPA.
Years, I didn't want to touch a receipt, and I used to just like no receipt. Literally, I'd do that. I'd be eating junk at the weekend and whatever else. No, don't hand me a receipt.
You know what it is?
Can I please order? Yeah. Can I please order half a cheesecake, large Coke, and 3 donuts? Would you like a receipt, sir?
Oh, no.
I'm good.
Yeah. I'm on a weight loss diet at the moment. Thank you.
Get that away from me.
The reason there is like apparently because of BPA or whatever it is impacts your estrogen pathways. But the point there is that when you look at hormonal pathway through a straw, everything looks damaging, right? If you look at it, like if you read a metabolism textbook or you read a biochemistry textbook, and you apply and you think, this is why I'm not losing body fat. This is why I'm not gaining muscle. Everything's going to be an issue, and that's where the insulin argument came from, right? It's insulin encourages storage, so because it encourages storage, you should have low insulin levels at all times. But we know that's not the case.
On the flip side, whey protein spikes insulin just the same as like white bread. And that's to say, okay, then you shouldn't have any protein either. So what do you eat?
I think you hit the nail on the head when you just said just looking at it for a straw, and it's so easy to get excited by these little things. But what you need to do is remove the straw and look at the big picture, and then you see what's worth actually focusing on.
What was the worst thing you did?
Very, very similar to what you guys said. It was the remember the estrogen stuff, the estrogen detox, the calcium deglucarate and the DIM. To get rid of like raw body fat levels. You know what I mean? All that sort of stuff. Oh yeah, you want to get rid of thigh and glute fat? Yeah, go the estrogen detoxification pathways. And I knew the estrogen detox pathways back to front. I knew every enzyme that went into it. I knew all the vitamins and minerals you needed to optimize that whole pathway. But I wasn't in a deficit. I wasn't in a deficit for long enough to get the fat off, right? So yeah, we've all been there, and I geeked out on it so much. I thought it was super interesting from like a theoretical standpoint. But again, theoretical stuff is fantastic, but without proper application of that theory, it literally just becomes mental masturbation. You know what I mean? It was just nonsense.
I remember I was in a consult. So I paid a consult with some guy, and my biggest thing was like, how do I get my body fat low? And this is when I was in that whole realm of discussion around hormones and everything. And what he did is he got a whiteboard out and he drew out phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification pathways for liver. And he said bridging the gap between phase 1 and phase 2 is where you're going wrong. And he said, here's the list of supplements you need to take. and there was about 10 different supplements. He's like, this supplement will impact this stage of the pathway.
Yeah.
This supplement will impact.
Yep.
And luckily I was at university and I was just trying to learn one. Luckily I was like, I didn't have the budget for this, so I didn't actually go and buy it. But I was looking at it and thinking, okay, let me see, what can I get here on a budget, right? You know, I'm a university budget, but I got to get these 10 stuff. This is why I'm not in shape, you know?
Yeah.
And Ivan, like you worried about the gluten high fat, but you know, when you got shredded glutes 2 years ago for the first time, I'm pretty sure your carbs are sky high, and I'm pretty sure you weren't taking any estrogen supplements.
Exactly. Carbohydrates were super high, activity was super high, and most importantly, consistency was super high. And just dieting for long enough and expending a lot of energy. That's what it sort of comes down to, right? You know what I mean? Again, I also came from the background of no cardio. Cardio will destroy your muscle mass. It will destroy this, destroy that. At the end of the day, cardio has been one of the greatest additions to my general day-to-day ever. And I'll never go back. You know what I mean? Have I lost a little bit of muscle because of it? Maybe. Do I really care? Not too much. I'm not stepping on a bodybuilding stage anytime soon. Cardio has many other benefits for me. That also, one of them is you can eat more food, so to speak. But there are many other benefits of cardio that surpass any sort of physical thing that you get from it. You know,
like
from
what?
a mental perspective, just like mental clarity, that structure, that routine, pushing yourself. Because I usually do my cardio first thing on waking, you know, and, you know, being able to push yourself hard first thing, doing something hard as you wake up. I think it's just a character building trait, right? And, you know, I've been implementing that for a very, very long time. And it's a great way for me to start my day. You know, I just like it from that perspective, you know. And I think a big myth that I also hear about is people who they stop doing cardio to decondition themselves so they can make the most of it when they start doing cardio again. Have you guys heard of that before? Yeah. Now, I understand it. If you're a bodybuilder wanting to like peak your physique for a certain amount of time at a specific time, a lot more goes into that, because yes, if you do too much cardio, you run the risk of getting flat, etc., etc. But if you're not stepping on the stage anytime soon and you're not worried about your quad sweep, then there is no reason for you to completely omit cardio because you think it's going to down-regulate your metabolism. That's a massive myth, right? People that do endless amounts of cardio, they just have a horrible metabolism, or they don't burn as many calories anymore because they're just not doing it, but the effort isn't exerting any energy. It's like, that does not make any sense whatsoever. Look at marathon runners. Look at like people who do Tour de France as an example. They are churning through calories. Like, I'm pretty sure, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think Lance Armstrong during like competition would have to eat 4,000 to 5,000 calories a day to just like maintain his weight as he's racing. Like, if that whole myth was true, where you just stop burning calories after a certain point, and there is this theory, the energy constraint model. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, where they did some research on people in, I think it was in the Hasdas. I'm not too sure about the actual name, where it was like, oh yeah, these people over here, even though they walk like 15,000 steps a day or whatever, are burning like similar amounts of calories compared to just people who are sedentary. You know what I mean? So that's where it's like, oh, so you don't have, again, there is this sort of constraint model where after a certain point, you just stop burning calories. And that was like the whole notion of this. So you don't have to be doing so much. You don't have to be doing this much activity to burn calories. And it's just like, well, no, because if that was the case, people who do marathons, people who do these ultra endurance events, they are still burning calories for a very long time. They are churning through energy. So I don't know how that theory really stands much ground. I agree that it's probably some sort of adaptation at a point, but to say that it completely stops, that's just ludicrous. You know what I mean? That is just doesn't make any sense, because, you know, calories burned or energy expended is unit of time. Like, the more you move, the more you will expend, total volume, you know? And yes, as you get lighter, as you get leaner, those numbers can skew. But there seems to be this notion where people think that if you've been doing cardio for like a year, the calories that you burn, let's say you were burning 600 calories an hour, a year later, you're not burning anything anymore. You know, it's like, that just makes absolutely no sense, right? If there is some adaptation, you may be burning, maybe if you're at the same fitness level, this is probably a big discrepancy. If you're the same fitness level as you were a year ago, you may be burning a little bit less, but that's not the case. When you do cardio, you become fitter, right? The fitter you become, the more energy you can actually expend, because you can put more energy into the actual activity. You know, people always think, oh, no, it's, you know, as you get fitter, you burn less calories. It's actually the other way around. People like Lance Armstrong, they can burn calories for days and a lot of people base it on heart rate, which is an error, because that's to say, like, okay, if I was racing against Lance Armstrong, his heart rate is at like 90 beats per minute, but mine's at 150 beats per minute, but we both go on the same speed. Then that would be like, I'm burning more calories than he is. Well, no, if we were both the same weight, both going at the same speed, exerting the same work output, we're burning the same amount of calories, right? Only his heart rate is at like 90 beats per minute because he's fit and he can do that forever. Me, I would have to stop, you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think the confusion comes in where people don't use cardio in a progressive way. So if you do a 20-minute, if you cover the same amount of distance in 20 minutes, say you run 3 kilometers in 20 minutes, the first day of your fat loss phase, 20 weeks later, you're probably going to be fitter. But if you're just doing the same distance in exactly the same time, you will be more efficient. So your energy expenditure will be less. However,
and also you're a lighter person.
Exactly the same. Yeah, because you've already got lighter. If you've got fitter though, you can actually go further. So if you still do a 20-minute run, that might now be a 5K run. And so you will be expending more. The issue, I think, is people just look at things so, you know, like 3K in 20 minutes here and 3K in 20 minutes here. Whereas in reality, just as you would in the gym, it'd be like doing 10 reps with the same weight 6 months later. The fact is you're going to have progressed it. So your output is going to be higher. And so, again, I think that's just looking at it for a straw, because you're looking at these two minute things. But in reality, when you put it into context, as long as you've progressed your cardio, your output is going to be higher, like you said.
Because you can give more. You can give more for the same amount of time, right? And if you were, you know, if you wanted to really spend some money and you wanted to geek out, like if you really wanted to know how many calories you burn, you could, if you're doing like cycling or whatever, you can buy a machine that measures your power output, like your watts. And a watt, your watts will be a much better representation of how many calories you're actually burning, because it's a measurement of force and time, right? Or whatever the equation is, but it will give you your average watts for the hour, and it will give you a good actual expenditure number. So you can actually see how much you're burning based on your body weight. The thing is, those things set you back like $1,500, $2,000. I've looked into it. It's not.
Have you used Wattbike before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
just so pricey.
It's so pricey. You know, I've got my little spin bike at home. Doesn't have the wattage. You know what I mean? It's got distance and stuff like that, but it's definitely not the same. You know. But yeah, that could be like a Christmas present later on. But it's interesting stuff. You know. But that is how, like, you would still, even if you were doing cardio for years and years and years, to say that you're burning less and less each time you do it is just ludicrous. To say that you just get efficient. Yes, you may get efficient if, as you're saying, Ed, you don't progress and you just coast it all the time and you're not actually measuring anything. You're still burning something, right? Even if you were to go, even if you lost like 10 kilos or whatever, there will be some metabolic adaptation on the way down. So if you were burning 600 calories an hour when you were your heaviest, and now you've got 10 kilos, for that same hour, you may burn now 500 calories. Or even if it's corrected for like a metabolic adaptation, you may be burning 50 calories less. But that's still 450 calories of energy you've expended. You know what I mean? It's not to say that is invaluable. That's still good, you know?
Same thing comes in when you're dieting in the calorie model. You know, that's where you hear about metabolic adaptation, in that if you've been in a diet or deficit for a certain period of time, suddenly you just stop losing body fat, or you stop losing body weight, and you need to spike your metabolism in order to keep it going. And really, it's just an excuse to cheat on a diet, right? If you look at all the stuff. Exactly. You look at all the starvation studies, right? You know, you see, and I know it's probably quite a bleak comparison, but when you see people in concentration camps, right? And again, it's a bleak comparison, but the reality is these people aren't eating. And over a long period of time, you saw what happened to them, right? They lost body fat, they lost muscle, they lost everything, right? Because obviously there was no stimulus. You die. Yeah. So
you keep going down that path. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's another massive myth that people think that, you got to spike your metabolism every couple of weeks in order to keep the fire burning. The reality
Yeah.
is to stick with it in a deficit and just keep actually staying in a deficit without keep continuously cheating and rebounding.
And how often have we heard people say, "Oh, I'm not sure. I think I'm not eating enough. That's why I'm not losing weight." You know, I've even heard other coaches say, "Oh, potentially increase the food." And like you said, if that was the case, you know, like people in Africa and things like that, they would be getting fat from starving, but they're not. You know, they're under eating. That's why they're losing weight.
And just on that note, when people say, "Oh, the increase in calories helped you lose weight," what's really happening here is an adherence thing. In that, you know, when you let's say you got someone on 1,200 calories, right, and they're not losing weight, and you might say, "Okay, well, let's do a diet break and let's increase your calories to 1,400." You're still in a deficit, but now all of a sudden, psychologically, you're going to adhere to everything, and that's what causes the body fat loss. Not the fact that you've spiked your calories and you've got the metabolism burning again. It's just the fact that you're initially being adherent to a calorie deficit. That's the reason why that works more than anything. It's psychological.
And you can also expend a little bit more energy now as well. You can expend more. You feel more satiated. You don't feel as food focused. It could be a temporary stress reduction as well. But again,
that's all just going to link in with that adherence, though, isn't it?
Yeah, and you may ride that wave for like a week or so, or a couple of days even. But eventually, you're going to have to cut again for you to continue losing body fat, right? So yeah, I get it from like it's more of a psychological break more than anything when people do those things. You know, from a physiological standpoint, there is no, if your deficit is set up correctly and you're not losing at a rate that is too fast for you, where you're dropping too quickly, that's when you can run into not metabolic issues, just adherence issues and just feeling like crap issues. And that's another reason why people cheat on their diet or go, think they need a refeed is because they restrict too hard. Okay, the more you restrict, the more you will compensate later on. And this happens all the time. This is where people do the yo-yo thing. This is where people go, "Oh, I'm going to eat nothing on Monday because I binged on the weekend," right? They go, "Oh, yeah, I'm just going to buffer. I'm going to buffer for the week." And it's like, no, that doesn't work, because what's going to happen, he's going to overdo it when the time comes. Our bodies are smart. Our brains have been wired to search out food. You know what I mean? Which is why our bodies will fight us, especially as we get leaner and leaner and leaner. And where your body fights you, that is a lot of it is behavioral and a lot of it is environment, but there is also genetic factors that impact that too. This is why there are people who they may, another myth, just a bit of a tangent, is people like, "Oh, you get to eat more food and you have a higher metabolism and stay lean." It's like, no, just because someone stays 5% body fat is 5% body fat. Doesn't matter who you are. Does that make sense? If you're eating 3,000 calories to stay there, or if you're eating 1,000 calories to stay there, people would say, "Oh, the person eating 3 times the amount is actually feeling better." No, that's not the case. No, you know what I mean? There's no difference because it's unless you're okay to stay there genetically or whatever it is, it's still going to suck because you're staying in a place where your body just doesn't want to be at. So wherever that point is for you, whether you're eating 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 calories, doesn't matter, because for you to stay there and eat 5,000 calories, how much activity do you think you got to be doing? Like hours and hours and hours and hours, right? So the end result is still the same. The person who's eating 3,000 calories still feels the same as the person eating 1,000 or 1,200 calories, because it's the body fat level that is causing the issues, if there are issues. You know what I mean? Not the total energy or whatever it is.
I remember when I was so in the last 2 times I've gotten lean and gotten into like crazy condition. Both times I tried to hold the shredded glute stage for about 8 to 9 weeks after. And I always thought, I can keep sneaking up my food just a little bit. And, at some point I'm going to be feeling really good. And just like, honestly, like my sex drive was still in the tanker. My skin was getting drier and drier. My moods were still cranky. And even though I was eating 3,000 calories of food, only doing 10,000 steps, not really doing any cardio, I still felt like shit. And it just didn't matter until I gained a little bit of body fat and just found the sweet spot that I operate at.
Exactly.
So something that would be good for I think clients to hear on that.
Go on, Ed.
Just you and Ivan talking about your experience there is having taken yourself to an absolute extreme. Now that is only those physiological changes in terms of sex drive going through the floor, like skin, energy levels, etc., is only going to really happen in those very, very low levels of body fat. Everyone's journey. And if you've come from 40% body fat and you're now 10% body fat, that's brilliant. That's an amazing achievement. However, 10% body fat isn't, on calipers, the average person, what they would call 10%, isn't something that's unrealistic to maintain. You don't need to suddenly gain a load of body fat to feel better again. We're talking about getting lean enough to step on stage at a bodybuilding show with the kind of conditions you guys got into and you're referring to. And so it's very much client dependent. So if you've taken yourself to the absolute extreme in terms of that, then those might be concerns. If you've gotten yourself to a beach lean condition, there's no reason why you can't sustain that, or that you can't have a good quality of life at that level.
And just on that, just so people understand, when we say extreme, like you're probably sitting there thinking, oh yeah, I've been in the extreme. If you haven't had lines on your ass, then you haven't got to that point that we're describing here, and you're probably fine. Yeah, and that's fine. Like, you don't need to be at that. But if you're at that point, that's probably not. I wouldn't consider that healthy. But the other day I was asked, what are the benefits of being lean? And beyond just sort of the process, beyond the mindset, like what are the benefits? And I think that's another good thing to actually discuss, because when you get absolutely shredded, I wouldn't say that there's many benefits outside of a personal challenge. Really, it's just a personal challenge to see how far you can go. There's no real health benefits. You're probably actually unhealthy. But what are the, like some of the actual benefits of being lean? And by being lean, let's say beach lean, sort of, you're looking really good on a beach.
I think when you talk about lean, that is also going to be very individual to the person. Right? My definition of what your leanest level should be, it should be the look that you're happy with. Obviously, you're content with how you look in the mirror, but also you feel good, you feel energetic, you're feeling strong, your health is in good order, your sleep is in good order. If you're a female, your menstrual cycle is back and it's running optimally again. So I think leanness and health do not have to be different things. And again, that's going to be a definition for each individual and what they define as health, right? But again, you want to have, I think I've said this in a previous podcast, you want to have the body that you can sustain with the behaviors and lifestyle changes that you want to keep for the rest of your life. So this is what happens as we go through the process phase. We'll push people and we'll be doing things that may for them be more than what they would like to be doing for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And that is completely fine. That is cool. No worries at all.
It's also important, Ivan.
Yeah, exactly. It's important to show how far you can actually go, right? Yeah. And you're not going to know what you want until you get to the end, because even for me, when I got to the end, I was like, I actually want to keep doing this because I just love the activity side of things. I love cardio. I love steps. I love just being active. I want to keep this active lifestyle and just eat accordingly to that. And this is what you have to find for yourself is like, what sort of activity level are you willing to put in day to day? You know what I mean? How much do you like training? How much time can you give personally to exercise? There is no right or wrong here. So you find that number, and then you find a look that you sort of want to be at comfortably, where you're not food focused, you're not binging. That's a big one. If you're binging each weekend, you're not sustaining a body that is lean for you. You're trying to be too lean if you are now binging every weekend after like ending your process phase or whatever it is. You're food focused. You don't have good meal hygiene. What's another thing? Yeah, as you're saying, if your saliva is low, if you're not feeling healthy, if you're not feeling just ready to tackle the day, or you're always hungry, then you're too lean for you. Too lean. You know? Yeah, that's what I would say.
I think it's important that in a process phase, you do go further than you think, because otherwise what you may feel is good for you, you Correct. Might actually be selling yourself short and might find yourself actually better, even a little bit leaner. So that's why I always push people to go as far as you can and then pull back a bit, because then you understand where you are on that continuum, and understanding that continuum is so important for you, because then you can say, oh, like, at 70 kilos, I feel great. At 68, I feel a bit tired. I feel a bit low on energy. 66, I feel really shit. But 72, I feel good, but a bit sluggish. 74, I feel sluggish. When you know these numbers for yourself, you then calibrate. But you have to know what all the numbers are first, and then find your rhythm.
I think also just in terms of behaviors, when you first start, you might think 10K steps and 3 gym sessions a week is crazy amount. But if you then push yourself and really challenge yourself, you end up doing 15K steps, 3 gym sessions, and 3 cardio sessions a week in the height of your process phase. by the time you then pull back to what you want to do like sustainably long term, it might be that 10K steps and 3 gym sessions, but that seems way easier to fit in, so much more manageable, having made the time for the extra stuff and shown what you can actually do.
Exactly. Yeah, completely agree. And yeah, you won't know what you want for the rest of your life until you get to the extreme. And that can always also change as you go on throughout your journey. Life will happen. Things can always scale up and down. But yeah, as Akash was saying, you'll know at what certain weight how you feel, what's good for you, and you also know what you can commit to when you really want to. You know what I mean? Which is I think it's a great like mental barrier to break through, because when you start your journey, there's still people who are here like you guys would have heard of this, like even some of interviews where it's like, it was like, oh wow, I was doing 30 minutes of cardio a day, that's pretty hectic, or 10K steps, that's a lot. You know what I mean? And it's just like, what, like 10K steps is like the average, right? That's what, but again, if that is your norm, so I'll never go above 12K, that's just ludicrous, so if your reference point is like a little bit skewed, then you would never know what you're actually capable of, right? Or what you can do.
That's why I always say, if you want to want to take someone to the extreme, you have to go to the extreme yourself, because then you know all the reference points. You can say to someone like, oh yeah, cool, 20,000 steps is, I've done that. So I know what it's like. It's not like, oh, I don't know if a male should do 15,000 steps, or I don't know if you should go below 100 grams of carbs, or I don't know, these sorts of things, right? Whereas if you've done the whole thing and it's fine, and you can come out of it fine as well, that's another thing. Then the extremes are the extremes. And as the whole metabolic damage myth busting has shown, in that there's always ways to push harder, right? And you'll be fine for it, and your metabolism won't get ruined as well. Like, this is another thing. It's like, I'm going to ruin my health or my metabolism if I push too hard. No, the reality is, if you come out of it properly, it's completely fine. And that's important. You've got to come out of it properly so you don't damage yourself physically, but also psychologically. That's why we have a consolidation phase. But the fact is, you can always push harder. And the other reality is that if you're light and your body weight and you're just a light person, whether it's a male or even especially for women who are light, they will have to go lower in calories in order to get into further depths of condition. And that deficit that you're in, let's say you're on 1,400 calories, and you get leaner and you hit a plateau or whatever that is, you will need to push harder and you will need to go lower and lower. And then there's a lot of people that are scared to say that because they don't want to, they don't want to show what the reality is here. But the reality of getting super lean, especially if you're light, is you're going to need to be on low calories. There's no other way around it. If there was a way to trick your hormones into doing so, we'd do it. But there is none. Like, there's a reason why, in the peak of my grind, I pushed to 1,300 calories. I probably don't need to do it, but 1,300 calories, 20,000 steps, 60 minutes of cardio. And I'm someone who's 70 to 80 kilos. So if you're 40 to 50 kilos and you want to get leaner, you just need to do the maths and figure it out, right?
And again, it's different for everyone. I was gonna say, it's just different for everyone. So don't relate your numbers to Akash's numbers. Don't relate your numbers to my numbers. Don't relate your numbers to Ed's numbers. Like, whatever the number is, it's irrelevant. It's like you need to do what you have to do to get to the condition that you want. Okay, and that's going to be different from person to person.
I mean, some people might need to do an hour of cardio a day. Some people just might do 30. Some people might need to drop their calories to 800. Some people might just need to stay at 1,500. That it's so different in an individual. Like, one of the members of our team, Rob, for example, he got in extremely good condition, and the guy at the end, he was doing 180 grams of carbs a day. He didn't need to go lower than that, and his calories bottomed out at 1,800. But on paper, you'd think, he's got a lot more room to go. But that's just not what he needed. And I think you're similar, Ivan. I don't know about you, Ed.
Yeah.
Go on, Ed. You were saying something.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, as much as we've said, there's the metabolic kind of damage and adaptation isn't the issue with your fat loss. I think it'd be useful to touch on for clients that there are some metabolic changes that occur, and that if you are 80 kilos, the calories that you require to maintain that is going to be higher than when you say get to 70, or if you then get down to 60. Just because you've got less body mass that you need to maintain. And so by virtue of that, your maintenance calories are going to change. So let's say you started off as 80 kilos, you might be eating 2,000 calories a day, or 2,500 calories a day and maintaining. Whereas if you've done a big fat loss phase and you're down to say 55 kilos, even if you've been training hard, you're doing cardio, because you're so much smaller, you're just not going to need as many calories to maintain that. And so that does need to be kind of factored into your thoughts as well. It's the thought that you go back to eating how you were with this smaller frame, or smaller body mass, just isn't realistic.
Exactly. And even if you were to add up the numbers of what the calories should be for a 55 kilo person or whatever it is, they're not going to add up exactly, because there is some adaptation that also happens as you go from a higher body weight to a lighter body weight. And there is research showing that if you're 100 kilos, if you go from 100 kilos and diet down to 80 kilos versus someone who's sort of been at 80 kilos their entire life without really thinking about it, the person who's always been there naturally has a higher resting metabolic rate than you do, or they have a higher maintenance than you do, because you've had to diet down to get there, and there has been some sort of adaptation there. And the research is still a little bit not much on it, but they are saying that this adaptation could be there for life, and that is something that is just part and parcel of this new identity that you have to be. Now, is it the end of the world? No. You eat 100 less calories than this person. That's it. That's all it is. It's nothing extravagant. It's nothing crazy. And as I was saying earlier, the thing is, it's the hunger levels. You get down to 80 kilos, and the person has always been there at 80 kilos. Yes, they may find it easier to stay there because they've always been there. And you got to realize, coming from a heavier weight as well, there are going to be things that there could be like hunger issues that will pop up, or your body will want to fight you more because you've lost so much weight, especially if you've been heavier for a very, very long time. Okay, you diet down and you lose a lot of weight. This is where the consolidation, this is where the investment phase becomes super important, because we have to spend a lot of time there, like a lot of time for your body to really get used to being there. You know what I mean? Because that's a big change for your body. You know what I mean? And remember, your brain wants you to be fat again. We have been wired to hold fat onto us. We're not wired to be absolutely shredded or diced. This is why Neanderthals died out. You know what I mean? Like we survived because of our fat storing ability. Especially females as well. So yeah, that's just something to consider as well. And this is where people make the mistake of going, oh, well, I'm 70 kilos, and they plug their numbers into like a calculator and go, well, this is how much I should be eating. Why am I eating less than this? Well, it's like, no, it's not metabolic damage. It's just you are not accounting for things that should be accounted for.
Sorry,
fat cells don't actually, sorry, I was on mute there. Fat cells don't actually disappear either. So when you lose that 25 kilos, they just shrink. Yeah. And your body is craving to fill those back up again. This is where your hormones are actually fighting against you, and your hormones will tell you need to eat. You need to eat. You're not full yet. You're not full yet. The reality is you don't need to eat, but your fat cells want to fill back up again. They want to balloon back up again. And the annoying and frustrating thing is, you never lose fat cells, but you always gain them. And I know, and this affects how you look. And I remember this distinctly, actually, before 2014, when I had my real binge after my bodybuilding show, I used to stay lean very effortlessly. But I'm convinced, and I can't obviously prove this, but I'm convinced that with the rate of gain that I had after, and how I literally rebounded to where I was and more, I created new fat cells in certain areas, because the way I stored fat after that completely changed. Now, you might be telling me I'm just talking shit here, but I'm pretty convinced that I created new fat cells there. And I know there is that theory of creating new fat cells when you gain weight too quickly, which is another problem, which is why it makes dieting harder again, because then you have more fat cells to shrink and you have more hormones in those fat cells fighting against you. But that's another reason why consolidation is so important.
But I think you made a really good point earlier when you touched on consolidation about coming back out being important to avoid that kind of metabolic damage. Yeah. Because actually, as much as obviously we put a big emphasis on consolidating well, but I think a lot of it isn't even the physiological, say, quote unquote, metabolic damage, but it's the emotional side that you alluded to as well. Because I think when people gain weight really quickly after, say, a diet or a photo shoot, whatever it is most times it's not going to be due to these physical changes. It's going to be due to the emotional responses and how the mindset that you're in, whether you think you deserve to be able to binge now because you've restricted for so long, whether you just haven't dealt with underlying relationship issues with food. And this is often the root cause for people then coming out and rebounding really badly from a diet. And then metabolic damage is the thing that gets, I must be damaging my metabolism when I was dieting. The reality is you didn't. You just created a terrible relationship with food that you haven't got the skills to cope with now, which is obviously why we have the consolidation phase.
That's why this industry is our duty to have that journey for people, because most trainers and coaches just focus on dieting. You know, everyone's obsessed with getting results and getting diet, and they call it a result, getting into amazing shape, and that's all they're obsessed with. But what they're not focused on is having a consolidation and then spending an investment phase rewiring that behavior, mindset, and identity, because you have to rewire a new behavior at lighter body weight, a new mindset around lighter body weight, and an identity, because most people are fighting an identity battle of being 20, 25 kilos heavier. And that's what causes, like you said, Ed, like that's what causes the metabolic damage. And the metabolic damage is actually probably more psychological than physiological. You know, it's
100%.
psychological damage to you by rebounding and not having a plan for what comes after getting into shape. And that causes the cycle of issues, because then when people say, I can't get into shape again, you can get into shape again, but you're mentally so damaged from last time that you're fighting more demons than you were last time.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's a psychological damage more than anything, an emotional psychological hit more than a physiological hit, right? Because physiologically, you know, you can restore an anorexic back to, if they got their lean mass and body fat back to normal, their BMR goes back to normal as well, physiologically, right? But from a mental standpoint, that's a different animal altogether. And obviously, that's a pretty good point as well. Like you can't quantify how good someone's mindset is. You know what I mean? Or you can't. That's something that's unquantifiable. But they may feel damaged and they may feel like scarred from a really bad dieting experience. And there are plenty of people who can attest to that. You know what I mean? Like people with horrible experiences with dieting and binging, this and that. Like it's a real thing. That, in my opinion, is the true metabolic damage. I'm saying that in quotations.
Yeah, I experienced that for years. It took me ages to get out of it. And it wasn't, and since it took me, and then I thought I could never get into shape again. But when I did, I realized that, it was more, I needed to sort my head out first. And then I could get into shape again, and then I could stay there.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
I think something we haven't touched on yet actually is maybe where the whole metabolic rumours come from. I think if we were to about, because as we do diet down and as you do get to lower levels of body fat, your body will start to downregulate some vital functions just as a way to be more efficient with the calories you're taking in. So for example, my resting heart rate is normally low 50s, but I know when I've taken it during a fat loss phase near the end, it's been low 40s. Actually, I went to give blood one time and I was refused because I think it was 42 or something. And they said if we take any out, there's a pretty good chance you're just going to faint. And it's just basically because I was on low calories coming in, my energy expenditure was high, so my body was trying to be as efficient as possible with all the stuff it had to just to keep me alive. Yeah. So that there is something that things do change, but these are things that as soon as I then increased food and energy availability increased, all of my bodily systems upregulated again, and my resting heart rate then increased slightly up to the 50s. And again, that's why you might feel a bit colder when you're dieting as well, potentially, as well as the less body fat on you. But it's really, I think these systems down-regulating is what starts these rumors and thoughts about the metabolic adaptations. The reality is the effect these have on your weight loss are actually relatively small. They get talked a lot about in terms of like bodybuilding circles where they're taking themselves to the absolute extreme. But when you're an average person looking to get in good shape, these are not things that are going to make or break your diet. And ultimately it comes back to, as we said before, dietary adherence, keeping energy, activity high. And even if, say, your resting heart rate does reduce slightly, that's not going to be the make or break whether you get a six-pack or not. It's going to come down to those bigger things.
And when things down-regulate,
go on. Yeah, I was going to say those symptoms come in when you're very, very lean. Like if you're getting those symptoms that and you're not even have visible six-pack, or you don't really have much visible definition on you, and you're getting those symptoms already, then there's something else going on that you need to address. It's a health issue, because the dieting shouldn't have that impact on you unless you're getting to the extremes. Just to make that clear, like your heart rate, yes, your heart rate will drop, you'll feel colder, all these sort of things. But yeah, if your hair starts falling out, if your skin starts drying out, okay, because remember, hair growth is not an essential thing. Your body would downregulate that. Again, accommodate for what you're doing. So if you're getting those things and you're still like over 10, 15% for a guy, 20, 25% for a female, then you're doing something wrong, or you need to address something else before you push the envelope for you, because that may be your set point, so to speak, you know?
Dude, this time last year, literally, I was my hair was falling out, my skin was drying out, I had dermatitis on my scalp. They were like, "What?"
Yeah.
They were like, and it was. I think it was also. It's stress on your body, isn't it? But that again, it's the extreme.
Yeah.
But the other thing on the down regulation is with the things that Ed mentioned. The other thing, and another reason for this metabolic damage, is that your NEAT will naturally go down when you diet. So as you get leaner and leaner, your NEAT, so your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, will go down, and you'll do less things, like you won't naturally take the stairs as opposed to taking a lift, or you won't get up as much, you won't fidget as much, and these sorts of things, without even realizing, will drop your calorie deficit or will increase your calories available, and you will slow the body fat loss down. Which is why steps, for example, is such a good marker, because while steps is not the only marker of your NEAT, it's probably the only one we can really track. You can't track how much you fidget. You can't track how many.
And technically, steps isn't NEAT because it's conscious.
No. It's not. Yeah, it's conscious. Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's another issue, right? People think NEAT, I'm just going to up my steps. No, you don't realize NEAT also is, your eyes blinking, things, moving your hands around, being active, all those things you just don't think about. So anything subconscious, that's what NEAT is. You going for a walk and dragging your feet, that's not NEAT. That's purposeful movement.
I think it's easy though when you first hear about fidgeting and stuff like that, you think, well, that's not really going to make much difference. But there's a lot of research to show it can vary up to 40% between individuals. So if you've got someone who's your friend, everyone's probably got a friend who they only ever see eating crap, but they are always stay in good shape. Now, there's a lot that you might not see. That might be the only meal they eat that day. They might be really active, but really often it's just that their NEAT is really high. There's a guy I worked with before who used to just hit 20,000 steps without even thinking about it. But not only in terms of steps, he'd always be moving. He wouldn't sit down. And he was just like, he was so lean all year round, and he wouldn't really track his food. It wouldn't be, the quote unquote optimal kind of diet. But he was always lean just because he was just moving constantly. So I think it's something that you can really just look past, but it has a massive effect.
Everyone's going to start fidgeting now, right? They're going to start clapping their hands and like blinking more. Like, you're going to get people blinking quicker now, Ivan. You said that.
One thing I used to do was, I remember I used to get the metro to work, and I used to always just stand up. And then I as the diet went on, when I was dieting, like the poles on like a tube or a train or anything, I would just be like leaning against it. So although I was technically on my feet, it was like I wasn't taking any of my body weight kind of thing.
The body knows. The body knows.
Yeah. The other one we haven't discussed actually on metabolism is BMR, and the whole concept that you hear a lot of these trackers and these apps will say like you're burning 3,000 calories, you're only eating 1,000 or something like that. Like and basing everything on your BMR or these expenditures. Like, let's discuss some of this, because this is another one that we all probably hear, right? And whether it's a coach or a trainer dictating plans accordingly, or whether it's a client thinking that they should be eating more because their BMI or their burn rate is so high.
Yeah. Well, number one, anything that tries to track your expenditure is just completely wrong. As I was saying, the only thing that can really do it, like if you were to get on like a watt machine, or if you went to like a lab that does like metabolic chamber stuff where they can attach like an oxygen mask to you to see how much you're actually expending, that's the only way to really know. Everything else is just more of a estimate based on your weight. And even those ones that ask for like your weight but you don't know your body fat, you know what I mean? So you could be the same weight, but if someone does have more muscle mass than you, they are going to have a slightly higher BMR. Another myth, by the way, people are like, to raise my BMR substantially, I just need to add heaps of muscle. 1 pound of muscle burns an extra 6 calories per day, by the way. Just resting though. I don't want this to be oh my God, that's nothing. At rest, you burn not much more, but when you're actually moving and doing activity, expenditure can actually increase quite a bit compared to if you were less muscular. But this is another thing that people don't realize is do you know what makes up your BMR the most? Your organs. Your organs are cranking. You know what I mean? And another thing that happens when you diet down is your organs actually shrink. Liver shrinks, right? So a big part of that BMR drop as you diet, yes, it comes down to weight as well. You're a smaller person, but now your organs are smaller too. So you're actually expending less total energy through the decrease in size of your organs, which is pretty crazy, right? No one thinks of that.
You're gonna get people typing in, how do I keep my organ size when I'm dieting?
I just smash the alcohol. That liver cranking, right?
Maybe that was the whole thinking behind the whole liver detoxation.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
that's why. That's why I didn't lose body fat. Yeah, that's why I didn't lose any body fat, because my liver shrank.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the whole BMR thing, which is really interesting. So yeah, those things that try to calculate your actual expenditure, that's all just way they just over predict it massively. I would never ever try to match my Fitbit or whatever it is to how much you think you should be eating. The best way to know that is to keep your activity and diet just constant for like a fortnight and just see what happens.
Mm.
That's the most practical way to do it if you don't have access to a metabolic chamber.
Yeah, that's the reality of a lot of this. It's just to really track all these numbers, you can't do it on an app or a wearable. It only works in a lab. And that's where the studies all come out from, is labs. And then the studies are what fuels the marketing that you see out there. And the marketing is what keeps people confused. So
yeah,
that's the big issue.
Yeah.
You only have control over. Sorry, you go, Evan.
I was going to say, you only have control over your actions, right? You don't know how much you expend with each step you take. You don't know how much you expend in the gym. You don't know these numbers. All you know is when I do 15,000 steps and I do an hour of cardio and I eat this much food, this happens.
Mm.
That's all you know, right? And that's all you need to know from like a practical standpoint. You don't need to know oh no, but I'm like 10 kilos lighter. So does that mean I'm expending 0.5 less calories per step? Now, how do I add that up? You know, it's like, no, just do the steps, do the activity, eat the food adherently, and then see what happens.
And if it doesn't work, just do a bit more or eat a bit less.
Yeah. Exactly. Or eat a little bit less, you know?
Awesome.
No, that's it. I think the whole metabolism thing is just the ultimate looking for that quick fix or easy blame. There's loads in the health and fitness industry, but I think this is probably the pinnacle of it. It's we know what works, and it's hard work and consistency, but ultimately it's obviously a lot easier just to blame a metabolism or some kind of 1% down regulation or something like that, where ultimately we know it's just the basics of hard work and consistency that are going to get you the changes you want.
Bang on. And that sums up part one of this myth busting series that we're going to be doing. So hope you enjoyed today's. If you've got any more that you want us to discuss and go through, we've got plenty on our list, and we actually only tackled 1 point today. We had 5 points to go through. We only went through one. So we'll probably have to do an episode on each. So yeah, look forward to it. Thanks for coming on, guys.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys.